Hey there, guys. You're listening to Yakkin with Nick. I'm here with Thaddeus Russell. It was a delight to get to... you're one of these people who I've seen up on these podcasts I listen to, and it's been amazing. I meet a few of them. Like, I get to meet most of my heroes that I've come across in my young life. I've been able to meet because all I did was listening to libertarian podcasts. Mm-hmm. But you're one of the people that kind of came on a little bit later, and I was like, wow, this guy is kind of even beyond these libertarian people I know. So it's been really fun to get to know you as a person a little bit, because we've had a couple hour-long conversations or something.
Yeah.
And I was really happy to have you on.
First of all, I love that you said that I'm beyond libertarians. I like that. I've never heard that, but that's exactly right, you libertarians. I'm beyond you. Not beyond Nick, though, because you're pretty extraordinary, and that's why you know all these people, these so-called big shots in the podcasting world. No, because you stand out. Sure.
I hope so, and I'm glad I've caught your attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wanted to have you on to talk about, you and I have talked about this a lot, and you kind of gave me this idea. You thought about it with Yakkin with Nick to be more local, but I hadn't put so much of it into practice, but you really kind of pushed me in that direction last time we talked. And so I've been thinking about, well, I really want to make this podcast the engine for me to be able to learn anything I can about the local scene, because it's just an excuse to talk to people. And so I'd like to do that in all kinds of ways. Part of it is the history, which is what I kind of want to talk to you about. But then hopefully we'll get some artists and just random people throughout the...
I love this idea.
Yeah.
I love this idea. I don't know if there are other podcasts that do that, that just focus on the locality. But I think there should be.
Yeah.
And even if there are, I doubt there's one that focuses on this area.
Most certainly not.
The Willamette Valley in Oregon, yeah. But man, and no one's better suited for it than you, because you're, as we said, you're like literally a son of the soil here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Multi-generation. You've always lived in the same spot. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, you plan to, or at least hope to stay in the same spot. So
yeah, that's my goal, is to become an expert. Yeah. So I'm hoping with
the thing is, I'm not really a local, though. I'm a carpetbagger.
That's the thing. Yeah, right. You're from California. We hate you guys.
Yeah, I know.
But I think what I want to talk to you about is, because I'm trying to figure out how, because I guess let me start out. Like, the reason why I want to study culture is because I want to kind of push this one along, or build my own, whatever you want to say. Mm-hmm. There's certain values that I think that I have that, if the larger culture could adopt, I think would be really great. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to find a way that I could do that. And so what interests me about you is you wrote the history of the renegade history of the United States. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of the ideas that I have are pretty renegade. There's a lot of people that the establishment doesn't like what I have to say. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that this is where I should start. I should start with talking to Thaddeus Russell about renegades and history, and about how have they shaped U.S. history, and then
you just made me make a connection for the first time in my own work that is really great. I'd never thought of this, but now it makes perfect sense. So the renegades in my book, just for those who don't know, are the outcasts, the people who live on the margins of society, and more importantly, the people who have historically lived against social norms. Now, these are not the people in my book. So we're talking about criminals and prostitutes and slaves and gangsters and unassimilated immigrants and gays before it was cool to be gay. And they, so those people in my book, almost all of them, didn't say anything political. They weren't explicitly political. They didn't write books or articles or give speeches or go to marches or organize marches or any of that stuff.
Right.
We have there's no record really of most of them having any thoughts at all. We just don't know what they thought about politics. We simply know that their behaviors cut against the dominant norms of the time. Yeah. And by doing that, simply by living outside the norms, they opened up a new space that others have occupied since.
Sure.
And they've sort of pioneered things that we now take for granted. So like, for instance, the prostitutes in the 19th century, they wore makeup when no respectable woman wore makeup. And they were the first women to do that in public and without shame. And of course, by the 20th century, every woman pretty much in the United States is wearing makeup. And that's just one example of many of people like that doing things that were not okay, that became completely normal, and that we couldn't imagine living without.
Right.
Certain freedoms. So I knew this, what I just told you.
Yeah.
I've said this many times, that they weren't explicitly political. As far as we know, there's no record of them having a political consciousness. And that's what a lot of leftists and even libertarians get confused about. They always think, when they hear Renegade, they think Martin Luther King, or they think the suffragists, or they think, these famous people who, as I said, wrote books or gave speeches, etc.
Right.
No, these are just bums, scumbags, crooks, right? The people who are considered at the time to be the lowest order of society. So here's the thing that I just connected because of you and your question. Therefore, they are necessary. They were necessarily all local.
Yeah.
Because they're not writing in newspapers.
Right.
Right. Frederick Douglass would write a book that would be published and then distributed across the country. Right.
Right.
And in Europe too. None of my people, as far as I know, did any of that.
Sure.
So these are all local activities. And I mean really local. Because we're talking about the 18th and 19th centuries when, there's very little national communication system or transportation system. So it's the Jewish immigrant who's 18 years old or 17 years old in the Lower East Side in New York City in 1921 when Prohibition becomes law, who says, hey, we just got here to this country. These crazy white Americans, because Jews weren't considered white, they have this thing about alcohol all of a sudden, and they made it illegal. Hey guys, there's a market opportunity there. Let's start selling the booze on the side, and that's exactly what happened. So Italians and Jewish immigrants were the leaders in the movement, basically against Prohibition, not as a political movement, but they simply sold the booze that was illegal, right? Yeah. And in so doing, brought down this law and changed the culture. So, but it's not like they had some national newspaper. They didn't announce this. Of course not, because it was illegal. Right. But it's all local. So they would have a speakeasy down the block, maybe on the Lower East Side from where they lived. That's it. So it's a whole sort of array of local activities that make up this big network of what I call renegades. But so yeah, it's all local, just like you, Nick. Yeah. Except that you do have ideas that you put out there, and you are already actually are national, even international.
Sure. Yeah.
But you're explicitly political about it too. That's how you're different.
Yeah, and I'm sort of shifting I think I'm shifting more in that localized direction, because I think you're right. This is just, that makes sense to me of where change can come about. Is I have an advantage over Kate Brown in my community because more people know me.
She's my neighbor, She lives right down the street.
She lives
I'm not a few blocks away.
Yeah, right. But you know what I mean? That's
it's the governor of Oregon, everybody.
Right. If you didn't,
we don't like her. Yeah,
we don't like her.
She likes to put people in jail.
Yeah,
among other things. But yeah.
Yeah. She, well, we don't need to get into that.
So how do you have an advantage over the governor?
Well, I would say in terms of influencing the local area in Kings Valley, I could probably do more just because my attention is there. Just because.
How many people know who the governor is, first of all?
I bet, I don't know.
Maybe half?
I bet more people knew
half?
Kate Brown than... What was the last guy?
Okay, how about this? How about the Congress? How about the congressperson for their district? I bet I know what we know that the vast majority of Americans don't know.
No, yeah, most people don't.
Yeah, you have an advantage because what? I still don't get it.
Because I know these people a little bit more, and I have that in with them. So I think that the being local, at least if you have that name, it can be a benefit, because you just based on mobility, you have a little bit more control or more influence over your local area.
For sure.
So, if you can take advantage of that.
I was going to say, yeah, that is an advantage. You have intimate connections already with people and with the place that I suppose the statewide politician wouldn't have as much of. But also I was thinking more deeply that you have an advantage in that you are freer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, to think.
Stuff. Yeah.
You can think much more freely. I'm not going to say you're totally free, but in your ideas, but because they're conditioned and shaped and framed by your surroundings and your parents and your whoever you've dealt with, right?
Right.
But you're sure as hell a lot freer in your thinking than the governor.
Yeah. She's
who comes from a system, is part of a system, and whose mission it is to basically maintain that system.
Right.
So radical outside the box thought basically not allowed. It's just not. It can't happen.
Right.
until they're elected president, and then the whole country goes crazy.
You're right.
So that's actually proved my point, right? When they finally elected somebody who did basically think unlike all other politicians, everybody's lost their minds about it, because this cannot happen. It's impossible. There must be some supernatural explanation for this thing. But but anyway, so yeah, you're free, man. And so it's a great thing. You can combine intimate knowledge of place and people with no limits on your mind.
Yeah.
So you can bring the world, or a world, the whole world of ideas to your neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
That's interesting. I've never thought about it that way, but you're right. Yeah. With just the power of the internet. And that's what I'm trying to do. I didn't really spell that out that way, but yeah, absolutely. So I guess what I would ask is just so my audience has a little bit of basics of the Renegade history. The way I've been kind of describing to people, this is one of the ways I talk about, well, why are we this way? Look at what happened. So we start in like America. These are the people who were either pushed out of society or didn't have employment. They were looking for employment opportunities, and that's probably simplifying it. But these are the people that came over, and it kind of started with those Puritans. And so they established that kind of culture at first. They were the first white Americans. And then as more people came in, they had a lot of mixing, right? And then, but this is where I get lost, is like, where did the Puritans go, and why do we still believe in their work ethic?
The Puritans didn't go anywhere. They're inside of you, inside of me, inside of Ryan here, definitely inside of Kate Brown. I think they're even inside of Donald Trump. They're inside of most Americans. They still very much define the culture. The culture still very much operates as a puritanical force. A lot of the assumptions of the Puritans we still hold as assumptions in our culture, but they're sort of unquestioned ideas. And so you know this because talk to Europeans about America and about American culture, in particular about like American sexual culture, right? And it's just bizarre to them. Like America to the French and the Germans and even the English, it's just like, what's going on? It's bizarre. We don't think about this. Like they have in France, 2 or 3 straight prime ministers, I think, had open relationships with a woman who wasn't their wife. Like public, like they were seen, pop pictures in the newspapers, and they would walk arm in arm with their mistress while they were married. But they were still married. They'd live with their wife, and then they'd spend some of their time with them, and everybody knew this, and that was that. So like when the Bill Clinton Monica Lewinsky thing happened, and this was like the worst possible thing, this unimaginable crime against, it was the only crime, it was the only thing that Clinton did that wasn't a crime against humanity, but most of the culture thought it was the worst crime against humanity, was to get a blowjob from an intern. Right? Yeah. The French were like, what is that about? That is so strange. It was just an alien culture to them. Yeah. So the Puritans came here as basically political refugees. Now, here's the thing, though. The reason they were refugees, they hated the way that English culture had gone, and in particular how the Church of England had gone, and it was just too lax for them. It wasn't strict enough. It wasn't disciplined enough. And there was just tremendous drunkenness, and the sexual openness of 15th and 16th century England is like legendary. And you can see paintings of people in London just like passed out on the streets because they're drunk, and like whores, like just, having sex with people everywhere in public. And it's mostly true. I mean, generally it's true. Like it really was in Paris and London, sort of an open air bacchanal much of the time. And the Church of England, the reason the Puritans freaked out so much was that the Church of England was simply didn't care too much. In fact, they participated in a lot of this, right? And they were corrupt, and they sold entrance to heaven, and you'd pay them and you'd go to heaven. And so the Puritans wanted what they called a city upon a hill, a pure and godly place in which to live. They would create on earth the closest approximation to God's heaven as they could manage, and they did a pretty good job of it. So so political refugees. You think of these poor people who were like oppressed by some dictator, kinda. Yeah. I mean, they were considered radical weirdos, and they were persecuted in England. But I'm never for the state persecuting anybody, but I don't know. It's not, I don't shed a tear for the Puritans' persecution. I mean, it's almost identical, really, to Sharia law, what they were advocating and what they imposed. Islamic Sharia law, in which, although actually the Puritans were even more puritanical, because at least with Islam, there's some promise of sexual pleasure when you leave this earth, and actually women. Actually, it's sort of interesting. Both are oddly feminist, though. There's much more equality in Islam and in the original text, in the Quran, and in Puritanism than in a lot of contemporary society. But anyway, both highly puritanical. So no drinking, no sex outside of marriage, no expression of sexuality at all. No dancing. They hated dancing. The Puritans were big on dancing. And the problem was that they brought a bunch of layabout Englishmen with them to sort of, dig the ditches and clean the latrines and build the huts and stuff, because they needed just raw labor. So a bunch of people on the boats that came over with the Puritans were just just bums, basically.
Right.
And so they get here, and it's like they got to pull trees out of the soil in Massachusetts in the winter, and then build stuff out of that. And then meanwhile, it's, the place is crawling with Indians, these savages, and who haven't built anything. And the thing is, though, a lot of these Englishmen who came with the Puritans had a choice, right? It was like, well, I can hang out with these Puritans and be in their city upon a hill and live in their houses, their nice, orderly houses. They're clean and where there's no sex and there's no whiskey. Or I can go hang out with the Indians. And so it was called going native.
Yeah.
And a lot of the early English settlers just took off, literally just left and went literally into the woods. And a lot of them didn't come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the things that we have some record of what they were thinking in some cases. And they would say, well, yeah, I mean, they have these night-long parties where they dance and they drink and they fornicate.
Right.
It's like, why would I want to come back to civilization? And the most famous example of this is not so much Englishmen going off into the woods in that way, but it was called Merrymount. So there was a guy named Thomas Merton, who was one of these English bums who came over, not a Puritan. And he left for the Plymouth colony, which was the original colony. That was the city upon a hill. And he just took off and said, I'm going to go make my own colony. So he took a bunch of people about, 20 or 30 miles north, I think, of Plymouth. Not far, but in those days, very far enough. Carved out a little piece of the woods and started building some shelter there, and built a maypole, which in England was where the sort of working class and peasant people would celebrate every year, right? And they would dance around the maypole, and there was lots of drinking and all that stuff. So there's a maypole in Merrymount, which is the name of this new colony, and they also but invited the Indians in to live with them and party with them. Oh. And so we have these records of, these, as I said, night-long or day-long or multi-day parties, basically, where there's just lots of cavorting and a lot of sex and a lot of drinking and dancing. So the very first armed militia in American history was established to crush Merrymount.
Wow.
So Miles Standish was this, he was basically self-appointed general that Plymouth set up. They set up a militia, and Miles Standish was appointed as the leader of this militia, and they marched on Merrymount, chopped down the maypole, arrested Merton and all of his followers, and banished the Indians back into the woods.
Wow.
So since then,
not at all. That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's been, and that was in the 10th year or something of the founding, the settlement of America.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my book is really, what I'm arguing is that fight has been going on ever since within American culture, between not just Puritans and hedonists, but between Puritanism and hedonism. So you probably don't know anyone who's a pure Puritan.
Sure.
Straight up, just all right.
I might know a few.
But they're pretty rare, actually, right? Who's a true Puritan who never drinks, never smokes, never does drugs, doesn't have sex except to procreate, because that's right. not too many of those. No masturbation, you know.
Right. Yeah.
No, it's the real deal. And the Puritan work ethic is the belief that work in itself, no matter what you get for it, is good, right? So they work all the time too. Anyway, so Puritanism, I say, has always been a powerful strain in Americans' thinking. It's sort of an assumption we're almost born with. But if you spent 2 minutes in America, you know that there's also a powerful hedonism at work in this culture too, and there always has been. And I say, beginning with Thomas Merton in Marymount, right?
Yeah.
So that's just those are extreme examples. But I think most Americans are both Thomas Merton and Miles Standish simultaneously, hedonist and Puritan simultaneously, and they're kind of fighting each other all day long. I think in most of us, I think that's what goes on.
Yeah.
Now, that could be true in other cultures as well. Sure. It's just that here, my argument is that the puritanical side is stronger, relatively, than other cultures.
That's interesting. And it makes sense to me. I don't know about any other cultures, I guess, but that's what, I don't know, that the consequences of that makes sense to me. Yeah, I don't know. And I see that a lot in people. And I'd say I've seen it in myself as I looked at all these ideas, and I'm like, I don't know, what's an example, like drugs or something. Like when I was growing up, I never would even think that would even touch weed. Maybe alcohol, because my family drink. But otherwise, I don't think I would have ever thought about it, just because it wasn't part of the culture and I was told, well, these things are bad. But as you run into these things, you realize, those cultural norms that's not bad. You know, they're lying to me. And then as you break down more and more, it's interesting. I think you're right that there's that play between trying to keep that complete order of society and then having fun. You know,
I've heard you many times say that what troubles you the most, or at least very often, is that you feel like you don't work enough.
Yeah.
And you're not disciplined, enough.
Right. Yeah.
You're not orderly enough, right? Now, that can be just practical, right? Like, okay, if winter's coming in and we haven't planted the crops, we're just going to die, okay? The Puritan work ethic is different. Which is that, even if we live a life of bounty and everything's provided for us, if we're rich, right, as a society and as individuals, we should still work all the time.
Yeah.
So that explains, in fact, why, as you probably know, a lot of the wealthiest people in the world, in America, work all the time. They don't need to. Isn't that the weirdest thing?
Yeah.
I always find that just bizarre. Like Bill Gates works all the time. Warren Buffett works all the time.
That's crazy.
Of course, they never need to work. They have more money than any human being ever has had.
Yeah, you could just stop.
Yeah, they could have stopped a long time ago. But I think you kind of got that too. But then you also were living the contradiction, obviously.
Right.
Because you also showed me a tub full of psilocybin in your van down by the river. So,
yeah.
Right? That doesn't get work done, Nick. I don't know if you know that. It's not what the Puritans recommended when, they needed to fell a bunch of trees to...
Well, microdosing might make you better at falling trees. You might be able to... Who knows? But no. Yeah, no, you're right. There is that challenge, and I think that most of my issues with my own work ethic is like I want more stuff to be done. Like I don't want to work for work.
But why? This is where we find out, right?
Yeah.
So if it's to be able to take more mushrooms, then you're not puritanical.
Right. That's kind of what it is.
Are you sure that's all it is? That's driving.
Some of it is money. Some of it is pressure, right? The only reason that I care about money is that I guess there's two. Like part of it is like, well, the society really wants me to play with them and they'll play their game just to keep them off my back a little bit. And then some of it's like, well, if I made a lot of money, I could do a lot of cool things, like buy property, which would allow me to build things. So, I mean, like some of it is this just pure desire of like kind of greed, I guess, of, this would be really fun to get there.
Yeah, greed is not puritanical, right?
Yeah,
you get that?
I guess you're right. Yeah,
they were anti-puritanical. So they believed that you should work hard and gain a lot of money. They were for money, they were for accumulation, but they said to not spend it on yourself. For Puritans, wealth should be invested in the community, back into the community, to make the community more productive. So that could be investing it in your business to make it more productive, but to serve the community's interests, or literally, donating money to the community, or, working for the community as the town mayor or whatever it is. But here's what you don't do if you're a Puritan. You don't spend your money on fancy clothes.
Okay, I'm not like that.
You don't.
But some of it, there's other things. I
you
guess
don't spend your money on a BMW. You don't spend on a flat screen TV. You certainly don't spend it on drugs or alcohol, right? So that was a core part of Puritanism.
Sure.
So, again, Americans are really conflicted about this, right? Because we simultaneously, obviously, you see lots of rich people spending money on precisely those things.
Yeah.
But you also see, don't you, constant criticism of rich people for spending their money on things like that.
Absolutely.
Which is also very interesting. So I just think America has been at war with itself around this question.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense to me with the local kind of political things that's happening. This is exactly what we see. It's, the alternative right is trying to preserve the Western culture, while the progressives are like, no, let's smash it. I think that's a pretty good, that makes sense to me. There's a lot of these cultural norms that are the left, a lot of people on the left are trying to change. And there's some pushback.
So the alt-right is a funny little nugget, but I can talk about them in a minute. But like in terms of mainstream politics and the factions or parties or, mainstream political tendencies in this country, they've been 100% puritanical across the board. So that, and my argument about that is because running a state, or being a part of a state, or being the state, or being a leader of a community at all requires some degree of Puritanism. If you're going to be running a country of 350 million people, you're going to have to do it well. You're going to have to be totally puritanical. On top of that, democracy is puritanical, and this is something people miss entirely. Although the founding fathers said just this, they knew this, but people have forgotten it for some reason since then. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, all those guys said repeatedly, look, if we're going to manage this place, go from a colony run by the king to a democratic republic run by the people, we got to stop drinking and fornicating. We've got a lot of work to do, right? Think about it.
Sure.
So what I say to my students when I still say it to my students in real life, when in a classroom, I say, look, to understand this, what is this class now? It's a totalitarian dictatorship. I determine everything. I determine what's on the syllabus. I determine what the grades are. I determine who gets what grade, but everything. Right. They get that. And they said, but you guys think you love democracy and that democracy is a good thing. So what if we made this class into a democracy? And they think, oh yeah, that'd be cool. I was like, oh really? What's the first thing you're going to do when we make this? Let's pretend you killed me and and made yourselves into the democratic republic of the class. And they think, and I say, well, first thing you're going to have to do is cancel all of your plans to do anything fun for the rest of your life. because you all have to now get PhDs in American history.
Right.
Then you have to write the syllabus, determine what's going to be on the syllabus. Then you have to, assign the papers, give the lectures. Oh, by the way, you're also going to be students at the same time, right? Because that's what democracy is, right? You're both citizen and ruler simultaneously. Yeah, no, that's years and years and years. And that's just this little class of 20 people.
Right.
So imagine if your little town, right?
Sure.
Imagine if Philomath, I always have problems with that. Philomath, which is what, how many people live there?
24, 26, I think.
2,600 people, right? Yeah. Small town by American standards, small town. Just try that one. Just think if Philomath, how do you say it? Philomath.
Like
if Philomath, Phil, second syllable, Philomath, were truly democratic, right? Truly democratic. Imagine that. All the decisions for that town are made by everyone.
It's pretty crazy.
This is a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
First of all,
and
right?
You have to have a pretty big meeting hall.
And so the radical Democrats, known as socialists, would say, oh, well, we're just going to delegate some of the authority. Okay. then I see. I see it already. You're giving up on democracy, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as they realize what it means, because they don't want to meet. They don't want to have meetings for days on end, which is literally what it would require.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even if you delegated a bunch of the authority, still we're just at Philomath, right? So then let's make. What are you in? Polk? Marion?
Yeah, Polk County. Yeah.
Polk County. Let's make Polk County truly democratic, where the people really make the decisions, right? Mm-hmm. Holy shit! How many people live in Polk County? How many decisions are made in Polk County? How many stoplights are there in Polk County? How many cops and jails and laws?
Cops, but no, you're right.
And that's a rural county, by the way. That's a relatively simple county to govern. Very simple county.
A lot of it is woods.
But imagine that, right? Yeah. If you, Nick, were like equal stakeholder in that and really cared about it, because that's what democracy is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm exhausted already, and we haven't even gotten to the state level, right? And then, of course, if you're truly democratic, then it's the United States, but we don't stop there. Mm-hmm. It's the whole world. Yeah. So make the world truly democratic. This is when the socialists just give up, when you take them there, because that's what socialism is. It's true. They're right when they say it's true democracy. I agree with them. But that's exactly why I'm not a socialist, because I ain't got time.
Right. Yeah.
But my point is, it's also puritanical, right? Because it requires work.
Yeah, sure.
Tremendous work. I'm glad when someone wants to be mayor. I don't want to be mayor.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
Right?
No way.
I don't want to decide when the trash gets picked up.
Yeah, that's crazy. Right?
Yeah.
So there's got to be a better way to organize people then. Like, to me...
Well, no. Aren't you for not organizing people?
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah. See, the way you constructed that sentence was already problematic, as we say.
You're right. Yeah. I guess I had this conversation with actually one of your listeners who got a hold of me, Matt and Corvallis. It's a cool dude. But we were talking about, what is... Because I still call myself an anarchist to most people, because it's a fun word to say. And effectively I am, because I don't want to really work with the government. But at the same time, what is the definition of a government? Because some people are like, well, as soon as people start working together, we're a government. To me, that doesn't really work with if you break down the word.
Voluntary associations by themselves are not governments.
That's what I don't think. So
that's fine. There's nothing inconsistent about that. Good. So this right here is a voluntary association. Yeah. This, you're doing an interview.
We organize just because we message each other. Right?
This is totally a voluntary association, right? It's an agreement. It's basically a contract. Mm-hmm. There's no government.
Yeah, but the problem is when control gets in the way, right? That's where I'm like, okay. Well, no, I don't know if that's government either.
So if I were like, fuck this kid, I don't want to do this interview anymore. He's stupid. I'm leaving. Kicking you out of my house. That's it. I can't. Well, I should say, you don't have a police force or an army to stop that from happening, nor do I have a police force or army to make you leave my house, right?
Yeah.
So then we're going to have to work it out. I'm going to have to get you out of my house by some other means, but I cannot use the monopoly on violence to get you out of my house.
Right.
So that's a pretty key difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that goes for all sorts of associations, including large organizations, right? There's a lot of large organizations that are not governments in which there is no monopoly on violence or no violence at all.
Yeah. And they still do some damage. Right, but yeah, I think that's where I think where do I go? I guess that's what I'm looking for
when you sell yak meat, right, at the farmer's market. I mean, yes, I understand there's laws against theft or whatever and fiat currency and blah, blah, blah. But, you don't need those laws, do you?
No.
To make that exchange.
Right, not at all.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
Just do that.
Exactly. Well, that's what I try to do as much as I can.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah. And it works out just fine, right? There doesn't need to be. So
let me ask you the tough question that I'm sure you get asked. What about, security? So what if someone did steal your yak meat at the farmer's market?
Yeah, it depends. If somebody steals a pound of burger, but if you steal my whole cooler, which is $300, that's I need that to live. I would.
And your car.
Yeah. Oh, and the car, that would be terrible.
And your shack.
What would I do?
I mean, so your van. And your van down by the river.
They took everything I have.
And your yaks.
If it came down to that, then...
And burn down your parents' house.
If I lose everything, then I don't...
Well, whatever.
But what would I do?
Yeah. How do we have security in that society?
How do we have security?
Nick, you anarchist? You get this all the time, don't you?
I do all the time. And this is the hard question to answer, because one answer is, well, I've got friends who have guns.
There you go. Boom. Thank you. That's it. Done. Right. Guess what? I'm no longer thinking of doing stealing your yak meat.
Exactly. Right. I mean, that's what happens. I think about this quite a bit. Like, what are the actual consequences of doing something? And a lot of people will say, well, we need the law there to provide that consequence of if you do something bad, then you have to be punished. A lot of the time, if it depends on what it is, right? But if it's a serious enough crime, a lot of the time that crime is dealt with. I don't know what the statistics are, but at least when there isn't an occupying force, it certainly is dealt with. And even if it is there, a lot of time you have vigilante justice. It's
sure.
It's the way the world works, right?
And you don't even need the threat of violence, retaliatory violence. Again, if it's local, then, one's reputation is pretty important, right?
Yeah.
That person's ability to make a living, to have friends, to have any associations in that community has just been greatly diminished.
Right.
So, yeah. Now, there are people who are just straight up psychopaths.
Yeah, right.
There are people who are sociopaths, meaning they don't care about reputation and things like that. But still, then that's when the guns come in.
Right. Yeah.
And we can do that. We can have one gun for me, and that's it. Or I can have me and my friend have guns, or I could have 10 friends, or we could form, a militia, basically, or a security force. We could have a company, a private security company with 10 or 20 or 50 or 1,000 people in it, all with guns, who simply work for us. We pay them. That's been done, by the way. Oh, in fact, most of the security that's actually done in this country, private security forces, right? They do much more of that.
And if you want real security, hire
stopping people from stealing your shit is almost entirely done by private security forces.
Yeah, cameras and security systems and even
and by the way, it's not like just fancy corporations that do that. It's pretty much everybody.
Yeah,
little mom and pop businesses have security guards, right? They pay them minimum wage or whatever, but that's what keeps people from stealing.
Yeah,
not the cops. The cops come in after the fact,
right?
Maybe.
So if you're lucky, you get there and you get out quick and you're done. You made it.
So I'm sold on that. You know about Dale Brown in Detroit?
I do.
Yeah.
I don't remember his company's name.
I mean, I don't either, but this is going entirely on what he has said about it. So I don't take this as gospel, but
sure.
According to him anyway, and it makes sense that that's what he's been doing for a long time. He has a private security company in Detroit, Michigan, and he's basically just sold security to people. And according to him, again, it's been a thriving business.
Yeah.
And stopped a lot of crime and theft and murder and all the rest of it without ever using force, by the way. But so, it's already happening. Like everybody has their own private security force, and that's what stops.
Yeah.
Theft.
I think that people, I don't know what it is. People think that they have, they have such a reliance on government. It's pretty funny because it doesn't really do anything that the private sector isn't already involved with. Like even the roads, who builds the roads? Sometimes it's the Department of Transportation employees, but a lot of time it's contractors.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just easier to do it that way. You can't hire that many federal employees to be working all over the place. Maybe I don't know anything about their system.
I mean, I guess people haven't grown out of this felt need for a God.
Yeah.
Really. Which is either a parent, right? Or God, or both, right? But I think in most of us or all of us, there is something there, right?
Somebody else out there that has their shit together more than us.
Yeah, our insecurity leads us to believe that we need this external, almost supernatural figure to protect us, to keep the world from falling apart.
Yeah.
And that's what I just laid out there is basically the psychoanalytic theory of religion, right? So we were born, we see mommy or daddy above us, and we're like, oh, they'll save us, and that's the world, and that's the God to an infant is mommy or daddy, right?
Sure.
And then we grow up and we realize, oh, mommy and daddy are just people, so shit, but we're still really insecure because bad things happen in the world, and then we get these ideas because we can't explain a lot of stuff in the world, right, that happens because we don't know anything. Because we're still young, and so we develop these ideas about it. This is a theory that's been put out there, but anyway, I think it's not bad. But I think that's the problem. And then the God becomes, and then God became secularized in the modern era as the nation state.
Yeah.
So if we lose the nation state, we will literally go to hell is the way people think and feel.
Yeah.
And that explains the anti-Trump hysteria, in my view, because they believe it's not just that he's evil, it's that he is not a president.
Yeah.
He is not the state. He is not the savior. He's not the protector, the God, the dad. We want a dad, and he's not our dad. That's not our dad. Our dad is a good guy. He's not that guy. No, really.
Sure, this is interesting.
Your dad follows the rules, right? That's what dads do. They make sure you follow the rules.
Right.
When your dad himself is like saying, fuck the rules, then it causes tremendous anxiety.
Yeah. Right.
I really think that's what's going on. That's why people, most of what is said about Trump makes no sense. There's no relationship to objective facts on the ground at all now. It's completely divorced from reality. I've never seen such a hysteria in my life, by the way. And I'm talking about people I've criticized for decades. Like, these people have really lost their minds now. But that explains it, because I think for them, it's like an existential crisis. They really think it's all going to go down the drain because we don't have a government.
Yeah.
Effectively, that's what Trump has become, right? He represents no government.
Not to these people, right?
It's not so much a bad government, it's a no government.
Yeah, that's
the worst possible thing for them.
Yeah.
Imagine if your mom or dad just disappeared.
Sure.
And then in walks a guy with orange hair and an ill-fitting suit, right? He's like, that's not my fucking dad. And he's like, drinking and like masturbating and not taking care of you. And not only that, he says, I don't care about taking care of you.
Yeah.
Let me show you how much money I have. And, right? He cares about himself. He's self-centered, which is true about Trump. That's why I like him, because he's just a complete radical in that way. But that's what causes them to freak out. They don't have a dad or a God.
Yeah.
That's what they need. So tell people to get over that.
Yeah.
Become your own dad or God.
Exactly.
Well, no. Forget that. Just get rid of dad or dad and God entirely. You don't want dad inside of you or God inside of you. That's the worst thing. That's called Christianity. But anyway. Did I make everything clear? Did I cover everything? So. Can I go now? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting idea, and I think that makes sense to me, because I think people, and I've forgotten this idea, is that your history matters. Like, don't ever for certain think that you're separate from the past, from history at all, just because we owned slaves 200 years ago. Put you in the same situation. Are you going to think about that? No, if it's the norm, that's the thing. So I think a lot of people forget that there are these psychological needs that we've built just based on whatever we came up with, because we're crazy monkeys that learned how to speak,
So you and I talked about this, actually. We are all born slaves.
Yeah.
To our parents. We're slaves. Sorry. Breaking news, but everyone needs to understand this, right? How are children not like slaves? I mean, I don't see it. They can't leave. They have to do what their parents tell them to do. By law, by the way. This is according to law, okay? If you become, quote, incorrigible, you get sent to what's called juvenile detention, but it's, of course, a prison.
Yeah.
You also, of course, get sent to another prison called school between 8 and 3 every day. But most importantly, you're just a slave to your parents, or at least a prisoner.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. I mean, it's just a fact. So, people need to understand that they're born into a closed system. That's a charitable way of putting it, not of their choosing.
Yeah.
Totally random.
And it might be pleasant. It might be a fine room, it might be padded. You might have some pretty pictures on the wall.
So, do you know about Norwegian prisons?
No.
They're nice.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they're like 5-star prisons. So they are. They're like probably the equivalent of quite a nice hotel, not a fancy hotel, but quite a decent hotel in America. Like, and there are a few guards, very few guns, if any. They get fed well. It's quite pleasant. It does not look anything like prisons here, And then we have Pelican Bay in California, which is basically just a sealed tomb with human beings inside of it. Right. And then you have prisons in the Philippines, which are dungeons. Yeah. Which are torture chambers in the dark. And then you have a whole range of different kinds of prisons, right? Now, each child, what I'm saying is that each child is born into one of those prisons in the world randomly. Mm-hmm. Now, you could luck out and be Norwegian.
Yeah.
Be born into Norwegian prison, or you could be born into Pelican Bay, though. Mm-hmm. But you don't know it. What the thing is, when you're born into that prison, you think that's the whole world.
Yeah.
Not only that, but the warden is right about everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is your whole world, right? It's the only thing you've seen.
The warden is your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seriously, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happens with a lot of people is by the time they're adolescents, they start to notice that there's like a world outside the prison that's different than this one.
Yeah.
Oh, this isn't the whole world. Oh, and they start to notice that there are people who act differently than the warden or think differently than the warden. They see choices.
Yeah.
Now, some people don't. Some people remain in the prison for their whole life. So I know people whose political ideology, whose way of living, whose culture, whose general pattern of thought at the age of 60 is the same as it was at 10.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fine if you like your Norwegian prison, but that's what you've done. You've just stayed in the prison.
Right.
I'm sorry, there's no other way to think about it. Like, unless you just are sure that everything your parents believe is the truth, the absolute universal truth, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, then you shouldn't leave. That's correct. Isn't that weird, though, that you just got so lucky that you were born into the prison that is totally true?
Right.
And good and just?
Yeah. It's out of 7 billion people.
Amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
If you haven't changed your mind in some fundamental way by the time you're like 30, you really need to think twice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right. And I'm one of those people that had a pretty soft prison, and I noticed.
Yeah.
And I was just sensitive to that for whatever reason, right? And I got out, and it's a much better experience living outside of it. It's harder.
Are you living outside of it?
That's a good question. I'm still within the grounds, right?
Yeah, literally.
I may not be on the
grounds of the prison, Nick.
Yeah. Same place.
I mean, look,
I've just made deals with the warden.
My mother and father are still inside of me.
Sure.
So I'm 52 years old, right?
Yeah.
I know. I can hear them sometimes, right? That culture, their way of thinking still directs or at least shapes much of my own thinking. Mm-hmm. Okay. I probably always will. So I'm not pretending that I'm pure and free.
Sure.
But there's degrees, right? There's some people who just think exactly the way their parents did, when they're adults, and others who've gone pretty far.
Yeah.
So you just have to figure out like how far you have gone and how far you want to explore. Mm-hmm. I would say not go permanently, but how far do you want to explore? And that's really where it starts. Just how many corners do you want to look around? Yeah, right? How many roads do you want to drive down? See, this is the metaphor I'm trying to get you to take your cross-country trip.
Yes.
Right? That's about just curiosity.
Yeah.
And some people are not curious, and some people are very curious, and some people are sort of in between. But anyway, there's always more prison to escape from.
Absolutely. There's always controls, right?
It could also be that you're going to leave the Norwegian prison for the Filipino prison, though. That can totally happen.
Ooh, yeah, that would be dangerous.
Oh, yeah. There are definitely worse places to live than your family's farm.
Oh,
Nick.
yeah,
we know
certain.
that. Yeah. So, yeah, but there could be better ones, too. I don't know.
Who knows? Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. So, looking at that, I guess, do you think that the main difference between somebody who's more puritanical and the difference between somebody who's more hedonist or more free, do you think that has to do with curiosity? Where do you think that how do you think that's cultivated?
I can't explain it.
Right?
I just don't. I can't explain it because I've seen no patterns that can explain it. So you'll have within the same family two siblings who go in totally different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can't explain it by class even, because you'll see, and Trump is a great example of this, you'll see very upper class people like Kim Kardashian and Donald Trump and Paris Hilton be totally hedonistic, but then you'll also see, as I said, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett being totally puritanical, and then on the other end, poor and working class people. When surveyed, Americans who make minimum wage identify as middle class and say that they believe in marriage and family and service and the military and nation and God. and hard work and the dignity in work. They're still puritanical, right? But then, of course, watch any hip-hop video.
Right.
And it's hedonism off the chains.
Do you think that that might be a difference in age? Because I think that, I mean, hip-hop's been around for a while, right? You can't really say that.
You certainly find more hedonism among the young.
Yeah.
But they're not, but it's certainly not a monopoly either. I mean, there's plenty of young people, right? Yeah. Well, because there's these Mormons and who's your people?
I think it's mostly Mormons. I have a bunch of Mormons.
No, your family's Mennonites.
Mennonites. Oh, yes, right. Yeah, sorry.
But the Mormons are a great example because we see these, especially around here. You see these guys, these 18-year-old guys, right, on mission in their white shirts and their black ties. But there's a whole bunch of people like that. Young people who are totally puritanical. But generally speaking, yes, the younger you are, the more likely it is that you're hedonistic, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Actually, I think there's actually sort of an extremes within the young. I know that's true for me, and I think you see it in college students a lot. So they're super puritanical in that they, the witch hunting, the moralizing and and they're the ones who are the big anti-consumers, right? They're the ones who really hate the rich, and they're the ones who really trash sexual expression, actually, right? Sexual expression is all oppression or victimization or something bad. But at the same time, what do they do on the weekends?
They get drunk and have
sex.
sex.
Get drunk and have sex. Yeah, many times with people they don't want to have sex with. But anyway, so I don't know. It's just my point is that I can't predict it, and I can't even see clear patterns. There's subcultures within America, and there's differences among those subcultures. So for a long time, like the gay male subculture was totally hedonistic, not totally, but much more hedonistic than most others. Black working class, the black, if there is such a thing, the black working class subculture. This is a big part of my book. Since slavery has been relatively hedonistic, meaning really just freer around ideas about sexuality in particular and work.
Sure.
They didn't have the Puritan work ethic, obviously, slaves, because they're not stupid, right? That's all sort of changed though recently, but so there but I don't have a clear explanation in each case. I have some ideas about why gays and blacks have been more hedonistic, but it's not a biological or economic explanation.
Sure.
It's just that those cultures developed as they did, and I can't give you an origin explanation. Immigrants when they first get here tend to be what we would call more hedonistic. Sure. They just don't have these puritanical ideas because those are American ideas by and large, right? And then they assimilate and they become good citizens. And they wear business suits that constrain the body and make us into soldiers, right? So I don't have a causal analysis.
Yeah. What do you think about do you think it's been a net benefit to have a puritanical start? Do you think that is, what are the benefits? Like, because we talked about it, I mean, stuff gets done.
Big time.
You're working all the time, you build some shit.
Totally.
Get skyscrapers, right?
Yeah, but, great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what people misconstrue about me and what I'm saying here. And I'm glad you asked that because I could see how they could misconstrue it based on what I've just said. So there's contradictions, right? And what I say is just, you got to do a cost-benefit analysis. Neither one, Puritanism or hedonism, is just awesome or just terrible, right? So with a lot of Puritanism, you're going to get really big buildings and air conditioning. Yeah. And automobiles that work well. Sure. And all the rest of it. And the internet. With hedonism, with just hedonism, you're going to get, you're going to get a lot of sex and a lot of pleasure and a lot of fun. So let's go back to the Puritanism. So with just Puritanism, you're going to have big buildings and automobiles that work well and a great transportation system and the internet, but it will be living death because there will be no fun, no individual freedom, no individualism. Everyone will look the same. The Puritans literally said they had a set of rules about how everyone should dress. Sure. It's basically a uniform. It's the pilgrim uniform, right? Yeah. Right? First of all, no colors. It's black or dark brown. That's it, right? And you shrouded. The whole body was shrouded. Yeah. So that's no good. But if it's just pure hedonism, we'll be having sex on the beach for a while. Yeah. but then there will be no food to eat. Right? So that's not going to last long. And even if it did, like, we wouldn't have the wherewithal, because we're just hedonists, to even, organize our militia or even get a gun or have a private security force. So we would be raped and pillaged and murdered, but mostly just wouldn't be any food, and there wouldn't be any place to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you got to strike your own balance in there. But what I say is, in this country, the Puritans have always had the upper hand. So that's why I generally take the side of the hedonists or hedonism in this country. And I hate it when people criticize hedonism in America, because it doesn't seem like it to a lot of people, but actually the Puritans still kind of run the place, really. Meaning the government is totally puritanical, of course, and then much of the culture is. I'd say the dominant formal culture, like what's taught in the schools, right? What is taught in the schools? You were in a school for 2 minutes. You sort of have a vague memory of what was taught there, right? They didn't teach you about prostitution or about how to drink.
Not at all. Absolutely not.
Right? Isn't that amazing?
They talked about prohibition, but that's...
No, they talked about sex, but only in sex ed, and how to what? Like, how did they...
It's the biological aspects to it, nothing beyond that. It's like, you get an erection, and...
There is in no way can they promote sex or even say that it's pleasurable, really, right? Or celebrate it in any way.
I don't think they did at all. I don't think they said anything about... the terms of being a relationship between two people, right?
Yeah. So if you look at like all the discourse that comes from politicians, including Donald Trump even, but certainly all the politicians other than Donald Trump in American history, I mean, all the way back, all of them. Look at what is said in the schools. Look at what is said in the textbooks, right? Look at what is said by the big businessmen, by the mainstream celebrities, by the mainstream movies and mainstream television shows, right? On the networks, the big ones, there's like no sex.
Yeah.
There's no sex. It's almost total puritanism.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to worry. The trash will get picked up. There will be cops or security. There will be roads to drive on. We're plenty organized,
right? I
think. So I take the side of the hedonists in this country. If I lived in, let me try to make a politically correct example here. There isn't one. Okay, an undeveloped country, right, with a very limited infrastructure and a very weak government or organizing force, I'd be wary of taking the side of prostitutes and drug dealers, right, and criminals, because it's just dangerous there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally. So I think you're right. There has to be that balance, and between, I guess, what I like Jordan Peterson. I've been listening to him every once in a while. His chaos and order, right? Sort of that play, right? That's interesting because. I think you're right. You can't have just a bunch of people that say, hey, fuck the rules, because it's kind of nice when there are some rules. It sucks when they're abused by somebody who's more powerful than you, but when it comes down to it, it's kind of nice when people are like, we don't steal shit here. And you're always going to have your exceptions, right? But if the majority of the people at least care about the rules, then it is a better...
Well, it's about which side you're on in each particular fight.
Yeah.
There's always a fight, right? There's constant fights, about all sorts of things. But there's always a fight around that question, order versus chaos. And in each particular fight, whose side are you on?
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, I'll say it. If I lived in Haiti, I don't know. I probably wouldn't take the side of the pickpockets. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I would, but whatever. I wouldn't take the side of sort of hedonism generally. I'd be really worried about getting running water.
Yeah.
And that requires order and discipline. So I'd be much more on the side of order and discipline, I think, if I lived in Haiti, I think.
Yeah.
But here, it's hard to find a fight around that question where my interests are threatened by the hedonists.
Sure.
Right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
In fact, it's always just the opposite, right? Hedonists, in my view, in this country, have always just advanced this world I live in according to my own values, because I like stuff and I like sex and I do like drinking. I don't drink, but I like drinking. Right. And I can't think of a time when they have ever represented a threat to me or my values.
Yeah. I'm not thinking of any either. Right.
Yeah, so let's take Kim Kardashian, something everyone knows about, okay, right?
Maybe I don't like some of the things that...
She gets trashed all the time.
Yeah.
So she's a classic example, right? Because she is loved and celebrated and hated and despised
right.
equally. It's amazing, right? Why is she a problem?
I guess what I would say is she might be a bad influence.
Right. How?
She might promote ideas that...
Like what?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. You know, I'm trying...
Well, you can... just think of what is said about her, right? Not...
Okay, I guess one would be self-image and self-respect. You have to have a beautiful ass to be great, right? To be a beautiful person, because guess what? Her ass is fake, right? I'm not supposed to say that, right? But I mean, that's the thing. That would be my thing. It's this false image of beauty, I guess. So there might be something that's...
Her ass is fake. I didn't know that's established fact.
Well, here's the thing.
Let's assume
it is established fact that she has people who...
For the sake of argument. Yeah, well, obviously. There's
I don't really care whatever is said that I say.
Regardless, it's obvious there's plenty of artifice.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
with her? There's no doubt about that. And she would admit to that. Right. So there's makeup. Yeah. Oh, we talked about makeup.
Yeah.
Well, so artifice. So on the body, that bothers you? That's a bad thing?
I don't think it bothers me, but this is what I've come up with. I don't really care what Kim Kardashian
Because everything's an artifice. You're wearing a hat and clothes, and so am I, right? I mean, that's artificial. That's nature didn't put those clothes on us.
Right. I chose these.
Morning, right? That's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of artificial things we do to our bodies. Yeah, so no, it doesn't make any sense to me. So beautiful, artificial beauty, hello, again, so guess who said we shouldn't do that? That is classic Puritan thought.
Yeah, you're right.
No, they could be right. They could be right. There's no way to establish that they're objectively right or wrong about that. It's just a choice. So go look at some pictures of the Puritans and how they dressed and how they looked, right? There's no fake asses among the Puritans, and a lot less than that too. And then look at Kim Kardashian. Make your choice. I mean, that is that fight, right? So yeah, the Puritans were not very artificial. Yes, they wore clothes, but they wore clothes of basically earth tones, pretty close to the earth. You know, that's kind of the point. No artifice, no ostentation, no extravagance, no celebration of the body or the self, no selfishness.
Yeah,
they were selfless, right? So Kardashian is the exact opposite of all that stuff, pretty much. Right. Yeah. So you make the choice, everyone. Look at the Puritans and their ideas. That's what they are. And then look at Kim Kardashian and what she represents, and you tell me.
Yeah, what do you want to live by?
And there is no right or wrong answer. This is truly about your own values, and I'm not saying you're wrong if you want to go live like Cotton Mather. It's a great Puritan minister.
Yeah.
I'm not, really, honestly. I don't care. People do it. Like the Mennonites and the Amish, they do it.
Sure.
The Hasidic Jews do it.
Absolutely.
Fine, great, do it. Just don't make me live like that.
Yeah.
A lot of Muslims do it. Fine, great. Just don't impose it on me, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's but, like, I can't find anything. I'm still trying to search my brain of it. As long as it's nothing that I'm forced to do, I don't care. Like, and most of the things that I see, it's more of a, like, I'm thinking now of like the multiple genders debate, you know, all the pronouns. Yeah. That's this idea of you have to follow. These are the language you have to learn these things so you can be nice to people, so that they don't feel left out or disincluded or whatever. That to me doesn't seem like a hedonist thing. That's more of a Puritan thing, right? You're trying to control language. You're trying to create some order. You're not saying, hey, say whatever you want about whoever. It's like, no, these people are disenfranchised in our society, and we need to raise them up, and part of the way is by including them in what they prefer to be called.
Yeah, so the trans movement made this really amazing and, I think, terrible swing from a totally hedonistic thing to a almost totally puritanical thing.
Yeah.
It went from being a very radical notion to being a really reactionary notion or ideology. So trans comes out of basically the feminist movement much more than actually the gay movement. Feminists in the 60s and 70s did a really great thing, I think. They said, you know what? Our bodies do not determine our destiny. Your dick is not your future, right? You can actually behave in ways that are not prescribed for so-called men, right? So-called men, as we've seen, there's a wide variety of the way, in the ways that they look and behave and act and think and things they want. Same with women. So there is no necessary connection between your life and your genitals or your chromosomes. That's it. And so it was like, oh, because until the 1970s, almost everyone just assumed that it was unnatural to have a penis and to want to play with a doll or like pink or be a decorator.
Sure.
It was unnatural, and people were punished when they had those desires that didn't fit their body. Punished, really. Like some were castrated, some were put in prison, some were killed in this country, in England, not just in like, Pakistan.
Sure.
So, I mean, to me, that was one of the most liberating things ever in human history.
Yeah.
Just that idea, because it gave rise to this tremendous flourishing of human liberation, not just among homosexuals, so-called homosexuals and trans people and, for everybody, because all of a sudden I could cross my legs.
Yeah.
And not think, oh, there's something really, really wrong with me. Something really unnatural, because men don't do that. Right? Or a woman could want to have short hair and not think, oh my God, there's something unnatural and sick. It was a mental illness, according to the American Psychological Association.
To have short hair?
Until 1973, to be transgender.
Oh, okay, sure.
Still is. I mean, well, still many of them think that way.
Yeah.
Including, I think, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, maybe.
Mental illness, that's what they think. So that was fantastic. That's how trans started, right? And then now, this is for some trans activists, of course, but a lot of them, the loudest ones, the ones who get the media attention, say, I was born a woman. Society is wrong about that. I was born a particular thing. My body is my destiny. It's just the destiny that it's different than society said it was. But that is naturally, essentially who I am.
Yeah.
Totally conservative, constraining, repressive.
Yeah.
Terrible idea.
Absolutely.
And then on top of that, they want to force, in Jordan Peterson's case, right? They, by law, they wanted to force him to basically have the same idea about their body and their destiny. Right? Yeah. It's horrendous. It's become kind of like the opposite of what it originally was.
Absolutely.
So it's called essentialism, right? To say that, your culture, your ideas, the way you are, who you are biological and essential. You're born with them, and there's nothing you can do about them, right? Biology determines everything.
Right.
Biological determinism or essentialism, right? So they've become biological essentialists when, in fact, the whole movement began with an attack on biological essentialism.
Exactly, yeah.
Good God. It's the worst thing you can do, right? Think about that. Like,
you just took away your freedom, right?
The thing, your biology, the thing you can't do anything about, right, determines the way you should live.
Yeah, that doesn't give you any options, right? There's no, that's by definition. You got what you're given.
At the very least, you will feel tremendous shame.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking something that's not biologically correct.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it's silly, right?
It's worse than silly, man. It's like, it's totalitarian.
Yeah.
It's totalitarian because when you get people feeling ashamed of their own bodies and their own desires, their own thoughts, you don't need cops.
Right.
You don't need executioners and torturers. They're doing it to themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. And they literally keep themselves in the closet.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I guess, where do you think that... Because it seems like it's changing very rapidly right now. Just within probably, I don't know, since maybe the 60s, I guess you would say. It seems like the world has been changing pretty rapidly. And even, I don't know how far of this exponential growth goes back. Is it the Enlightenment? But, it certainly happens as we modernized, it became more industrial. People moved to the cities, right? It became more close, more interaction. And then as communications came up, even more so, and even more so now with the internet, right? It's crazy. Yeah. Now anybody, even myself, some kid born in the middle of dumbfuck Oregon, get on a podcast and do this, right? So do you think that do you see more hedonism coming through than you think there has been in the past? Like, obviously there was hedonists in terms of race relations, right? Where that was, it's just a terrible situation.
Well, it depends on I don't know who you're talking about. who are the hedonists in race? Because that's a mixed bag. So the civil rights movement was not really hedonistic. In fact, it was anti-hedonistic.
Yeah, because you've explained. I'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so they were about becoming American citizens.
Yeah.
Right. So now again, there's benefits to that, obviously, right? And I wouldn't deny those to anyone. I get it. I want them too. The benefits of citizenship, tremendous in this country, sure. But my whole point is that there are also costs, and that's what people completely miss or ignore. Tremendous costs. The costs of cultural diversity, individual freedom, individualism, individual identity, pleasure, a whole bunch of stuff that was you were required to get rid of to become an American citizen. That goes for not just blacks, but all immigrant groups, and now gays, by the way. So that's what gays have been going through the last 20 or 30 years. Very hedonistic movement in the 60s and 70s. And since they decided to become citizens, they've, as a political movement, they become more and more and more conservative and assimilationist. We're just like you. We want to get married. We want to have kids. We want to shop at IKEA. Really. And so their whole, and we want to join the military.
Yeah.
So their whole presentation as a political, and I'm just talking about the political activist wing of gays, right? There are plenty of gays who could give a shit about any of this stuff, but the activists and the intellectuals, they understood, and it's not because they are evil or puritanical necessarily, it's that they understand the rules of the game.
Yeah.
America has always insisted that to get the benefits of citizenship, equal protection under the law, right, and the right to vote, that you must play the game according to the rules established by those people in Plymouth Rock. You must be orderly and disciplined in all things in your life, or we're not going to protect you.
Yeah.
We're not going to protect you. That's what was literally said to the slaves after emancipation. Union soldiers would march up to the plantations where the slaves were liberated, and they would literally give a speech to the slaves and say, yeah, so, you're surrounded by all these Southerners who want to enslave you or kill you.
Yeah. Okay.
And they have guns. They will do that. We have an army. We'll protect you. But you have to play by the following rules. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're all going to get married. There was an actual rule. They couldn't be allowed. They were not allowed into the so-called contraband camps, the camps that sort of protected slaves during the war, as a couple, unless you're married.
Wow.
You have to understand that work is good. You must show up to work on time and leave when you're supposed to. You must obey the orders of your boss. You must be good, loyal, patriotic Americans.
Yeah.
If you ever fight, you must fight for the United States in the red, white, and blue, not any other group, no rebel group.
Right.
You must be loyal to the president and all authority. You must be a good Christian. I mean, and there were actual textbooks that were read aloud to the slaves, ex-slaves, saying just this. And the Union soldiers who liberated them gave them that speech and said that we're not going to protect you. We will leave you to the Ku Klux Klan if you don't do this. Yeah. So it was announced to the ex-slaves in that way, very dramatically, but to every immigrant group, it's been understood after a while, because they noticed that, we're not getting jobs. We're not getting hired. Like when the Irish first came here and the Jews first came here and the Italians first came here. They're like, oh, wait, we're not getting any jobs. We're getting turned down for jobs. And none of our people hold elective office. And often we're told that we can't vote. And we're segregated, basically, by real estate agents and city governments. And so we have to live in the slums. But we also are inventing tap dance. That's the Irish. We're also like hanging out with blacks, playing jazz. That's the Jews and the Italians. We're also like bootleggers and rum runners. That's the Jews and the Italians. Right. And so in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, all those groups decided to say, no, we're just going to go American. So we're going to tell our people, stop all that bullshit.
Yeah.
Straighten up, stop dancing.
And I know this was just as explicit as the text, like you were just talking about.
So you had,
especially with the rabbis, I knew that.
The organized groups and the church in particular, among all three groups, would do this. They would go into the community. They would send people into the community and say, look, guys, we're not going to get the vote. We're not going to get treated well. We're not going to get good jobs. We're not going to be able to move out of the slums until you stop fucking dancing with those niggers. Literally, that's what was said, because that's what they were doing. among other things, but that was the worst thing they were doing. So they also became racist too. That was like a part of, that's one of the rules, right? Not so much that you need to hate black people, but you need to stop acting black.
Sure.
You know, there are good, so-called good black people. They're fine to hang out with, but those jazz singers, no. No.
None of them.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's still the rule of the game.
Yeah.
You know, and gays understood that by the 1980s. They're like, oh shit, we got to stop fucking in the bushes. Like that's literally what Larry Kramer, the leader of the gay marriage movement, said in a speech at Cooper Union in New York City, like announcing this movement for gay marriage. Said, we must stop fucking in the bushes if we're going to become first-class citizens.
Right.
He called for shutting down all the bathhouses in San Francisco and New York. The leaders of the gay marriage movement called for that. The leaders of the gay marriage movement called for banning drag queens from all the pride parades.
Wow.
Them, not the Christian conservatives.
Yeah.
They were the ones, because they said, you know, we've got to put forward an image of good, wholesome, clean, Puritan. They didn't use this word, but good, clean, wholesome Americans,
sure.
Which means Puritan. And that's what they got.
Yeah.
So they got marriage and they got the military. They're allowed into the military. And there are no bathhouses anymore. There's hardly any gay bars anymore.
Right.
There's hardly any gay men fucking in the bushes. There's much less promiscuity.
Sure.
There's some, much less of it. They were the beacons of sexual liberation.
Yeah.
Not anymore. But they got American citizenship. They're treated pretty close to equal now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty
close to equal.
Like I think there's definitely some room to go with the culture probably, but legally, yeah.
There's very little like effective homophobia, I would say, in this society now.
I would definitely agree. I can't think of anything in terms of that I would have seen,
where people are actually denied jobs or, you know,
right,
kept out of institutions or clubs or organizations. It just doesn't have. In fact, if anything, it's just the reverse. I mean, a lot of institutions are not only, you know, either run or dominated by gays, or they give effectively affirmative action to gays, right?
Yeah.
But it's basically equal. And that was not the case 50 years ago at all.
Sure.
So again, cost benefit. So no longer are you, as a gay man or woman, in danger of the cops rolling up on you anytime they want and putting you in the paddy wagon and taking you down to central booking and then giving your name to the newspaper to shame you publicly, which was standard practice until the 1960s in every city. That's not going to happen anymore. Great. That's fantastic. But the cost as a culture, as a group, is that, you know, they're no longer saying, hey, the nuclear family sucks. Yeah. Hey, lifelong monogamy makes no sense, because gays weren't doing any of those things.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, you know, sex and the body, those aren't necessarily bad things, you straights.
Right.
They were the ones who really led the sexual liberation movement, and they don't do that anymore. And also it's just, and then marriage, for fuck's sake. Speaking of prisons, you know? Now, the good news is that most gays, contrary to popular opinion, don't want to get married.
Yeah.
And I think those who are married are finding out that they're really finding out the costs of citizenship.
Right.
Because I think that I've heard, we don't know, but I think the divorce rate is really high.
Yeah.
It's just the hardest thing I've ever done. Being married and having kids.
Sure.
Oh my God. No, it's just, but it's certain, I'll tell you one thing, nothing will constrict your freedom faster than being married and having a kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that'll make you into a good Puritan citizen instantly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And I know people who that's happened to, because all of a sudden you have to provide for this kid. You can't be not making money.
Yeah.
Can't be just kind of eating top ramen.
Oh my God. You can't go to the bar. I mean, you can, but you won't be a dad anymore.
Right.
You won't be a parent anymore. That's true. But if you're going to be a parent, you can't. Oh, it's the most disciplining thing in the world.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. So that's why the family has always been at the center of American citizenship and American culture, right? The family. We love the family. We pride ourselves in our family. We protect it. We do all these things. Even liberals, right? They talk about how important the American family is, the nuclear family, which is the craziest, worst thing.
Yeah, the nuclear family is the thing that's interesting to me, because I feel like, well, I'm pro family, because I think you should be living with your extended family.
Totally.
But yeah, it's a totally different thing.
Mom, two people with a bunch of kids on an island.
Yeah. Where did that come from? That comes from, from what I learned, it was the Industrial Revolution. As people moved to the cities, they but which kind of this doesn't make sense fully in my head, because what I hear is a lot of the minorities came in and they would have been the low
immigrants.
Yeah,
right.
They would have been the ones doing most of that industrial labor. And to me, what I've heard is that they're the ones they're going to have they're more likely to live with extended family.
Yeah.
So was that an industrial nuclear family thing, or would it actually have been something more progressive? Okay,
so the Marxist argument, the Marxist argument is that it came with industrial capitalism, in that industrial capitalism was taxing to workers, and therefore workers needed some respite, some place to go to heal themselves and to rest between their 18-hour factory shifts, which was the home and the wife, right, and the family. So that doesn't really work as an analysis for a couple of reasons. One is that, of course, hours have changed dramatically. We still work too much, but we work about half as much as we did when Marx was writing. Right. Also, as you were saying, much of the industrial working class during that time was in extended families. There was Italians and Slavs and all these immigrants coming over with mom and dad and aunts and uncles and cousins and grandma, right? And they were working just fine, 16 hours a day. In fact, it was easier because you have this whole network to rely upon. Mexicans, for fuck's sake, Mexican immigrants, right? I mean,
right now,
it's all extended families. Huge. They come over with whole communities, right? And they're all working. That is the industrial working class. They're working that's who works in the factories now, and they go home to a house with 10 people in it. Yeah, and they're working just fine. Working more according to the capitalists, they're working just fine. Yeah. So so as an ideology, as an idea, the nuclear family being the only good and natural thing to do, I can tell you this for sure, that it starts with democracy. Yeah. In this country, the democratic idea is what required the nuclear family. I wouldn't say it requires it, but the nuclear family certainly helps with the democratic project, right? Because what you need, as I said, is self-disciplined individuals, self-regulated, orderly individuals, orderly in their own lives. And again, try being a parent, in a nuclear family. Again, you got no help, right? That's the point of the nuclear family. You're not relying on anyone outside, just the two of you. Yeah, that's what that means. That's what that means. Yeah, you don't have any of your family living near you who you can rely on economically or otherwise. That's what that means, right? That's what the good American is. The good American is an independent, self-sufficient person. That's what we value more than anything else. Democracy needs that too, because democracy is all about work. Yeah. So you're going to spend all day long at the meetings planning where to put the stoplights in Philomath. Philomath? Jesus.
It's good. That's fine.
And then you come home, and you got to take care of your kids. So you can't be going to the bar. You can't be going to the movies. Sex with your wife. I mean, if you want to have another kid, maybe, but you don't have time or energy after all that, after running the world. Right. And having a kid. But so it all works together to discipline the body, the self, the individual. So here's the thing, Nick. Do you know what I just described? What ideology I just described there? That's classical liberalism. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I think you're right. So your boy Ron Paul, that's him. That's him. Yeah. They're classical liberals. That's the John Locke, Adam Smith jam right there. It's the self-regulating individuals at the heart of that stuff. That's what I bought into a long time ago. I mean, not that long ago. So when it comes to public policy, specific decisions on public policy, state law or government law and all that, I'm with the classical liberals on most things, almost everything. Sure. But they're also, you may have noticed, quite conservative culturally. Yeah. And aren't so fond of the gays and aren't so fond of the blacks often. Either they won't say anything about the gays and the blacks, or they will say some things kind of mumbled, but they clearly are not comfortable with that. And that's why, because that whole ideology, see, they assume that you just take the state out of it and everybody's going to be like a good little businessman. Right. You'd be rational, right? Yeah, you're going to be rational and you're just going to be a good little entrepreneur and you're going to be building your business all day long. Everyone's going to do that automatically and naturally. Right. Well, maybe, but it sure doesn't look that way. When you let authority just, state authority just go, people go in all sorts of directions. Some of them do become the awesome little tech entrepreneur and others do drugs.
Yeah.
And others become drag queens, and others become Nick Hazelton, and right. So this is the big lie in the middle of that whole ideology that they don't ever confront. But it's also it makes them, it explains why they're so damn conservative and the enemies of the renegades. So the true classical liberals, what I call right-wing libertarians, and I love a lot of those guys, by the way, and I've learned so much from them. I'm not trashing them. A lot of them don't even know, but they are the renegades of their enemies.
Yeah.
So that's why when I deal with them, I'm not going to name names here, but libertarians who are listening know who I'm talking about. And again, like, I really do love a lot of these people. They just don't know this. I don't think they've computed, but they don't understand what the hell I'm talking about. Because people like that can't be good because they're not working. They're not producing. They're not making money. They're not rational economic actors. They're doing things that are irrational economically.
Right.
They may be working outside of state control, which is good, but they're doing the wrong thing outside of state control in many cases, right? So, that's why that's the basic beef I have with libertarianism generally, because it comes out of classical liberalism. There are a few libertarians who are hip to this and get it, and so they're both politically and economically libertarian and also culturally libertarian.
Right.
So they do celebrate, like Richard Pryor, stand-up comedians who talk about sex and fornicating and drugs and drinking and all the rest of it, right? But most right-wing libertarians, which means most libertarians, don't. They don't like it. They don't like it because they're rational economic actors, and they think everyone should be and will be when we get rid of the state. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing because that's the ideology I grew up with. For the last 5 years, I've really been really into classical liberalism, and I found exactly what you've said. That I guess mainly the thing is it's hard to be a self-sustaining individual. Like it's definitely rewarding when I've been able to be on my own feet, because I've done it a little bit. I've kind of failed at it, but it was great. I felt really rewarded, but man, was I tired. Like I had to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It can be done. I'm not saying it can't be done. I am saying it's difficult, but it totally can be done. It has been done. It's been proven that you can do it. And I'm also not saying it's bad to do it.
Sure.
I got no problem with your dad or whoever being, a business suit wearing, business owner all by himself, not drinking and sleeping only with his wife his entire life. Seriously, I got zero problem with that. I'm just saying there are other things in life that I care about.
Absolutely.
That's it. And I think I speak for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people want more than that. And, if you want to let us go our own way, I'll let you go your own way.
Sure.
Now, we totally agree on the state.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Like, the less state, the better.
Exactly.
I don't even see an end to that, in my view. Like, there's never going to be... I will always want less state.
Sure. As much as we can get rid of people being in control, the better.
Sure. Yeah, it's a monopoly on violence. I'm totally down with that.
Yeah.
That analysis and that politics. And I think the market is... Well, here's the thing about the market, though, right? The market disciplines us in this way, too.
Sure.
So I'm totally... I have very conflicted views on the market.
Yeah.
I most certainly prefer it over all other systems we know about. And I also am totally convinced that it is best for poor people, in terms of raising living standards and material wealth.
Yeah.
But it also causes tremendous anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which sucks.
Yeah,
Cost-benefit analysis. So again, I don't even know what to say, except that let's just have that in our minds simultaneously, that it's kind of beautiful and terrible. Like every day, I marvel at the wonders that capitalism has brought to me, and I freak the fuck out all day long about, oh my God, I didn't work enough, or I didn't get enough done, or I didn't make enough money, or I'm not going to make enough money, and the future pounds me in the head all day long because, oh my God, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to get there, I'm not going to hit that mark, I'm not going to get that dollar amount. I'm going to be homeless, I'm going to be, you name it, right? All the fantasies come spooling out, and they're not totally irrational.
Right.
Because if I do lose my job or lose my business or my business declines or the market declines or whatever happens, I could in fact be homeless tomorrow. That's not true in socialism, or it's much less true in socialism. You know? So what I say is, if you're into depression, be a socialist. If you're into anxiety, be a capitalist.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's interesting. That's
all I got for you.
way to put it, man. Yeah. I like that because that makes a lot of sense to me, because that's what I find is it just on a, like, it's the metaphor of where you could apply that. It's the chaos and order thing, right? You can step out of the comfort zone and worry, or you can stay in your comfort zone and be like, well, this is boring.
Yeah. It depends on what you want.
Yeah.
Some people want to be regimented. You know, they want to have no individual identity. Yeah. Really, there's a lot of them, you know, and that's not just socialists. That's like people who want to be in the army.
True.
Really love being in the army. And I think that's genuine. They really love that. And it's not that they want to kill people. I think it's mostly that they want to be part of a larger order.
Yeah.
And I think they want to have no decision-making, no choices to make, or very few, right? Because there are no choices when you're in the army at all. Everyone makes those decisions for you. Well, the thing is, they have a point, because those decisions suck.
Yeah,
a lot of most
you're
of them.
In battle and
most
you decide
of them
to run
suck.
around.
No, just
get out of there.
No, what time to get up in the morning? That sucks.
Sure, yeah,
Before we've started the day, we have a decision that sucks, right?
Yeah.
Do I get up now with the alarm? Fuck, I hate that decision every single day, and I have every day of my life, right? In the army, it's taken from you.
Right.
You just get up. You stop thinking about it. I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Everything's decided for you. All the decisions already made. You become a cog in the machine. I get why that's appealing. I seriously get, because my life is almost the exact opposite, right?
Yeah.
I'm just a floating free agent all day long.
It's a problem.
Like,
right?
whether I live or die, literally, is up to me every second, constantly. I'm making decisions all day long about that will determine whether I live or die.
Yeah.
Or live decently.
Yeah.
Or die.
Yeah.
Or live well. Or, you know, I mean, it's so... Yeah, it's beautiful, terrible, as a friend of mine once said.
Yeah, my position comes at it.
I prefer it to socialism.
Absolutely.
So I like being bossed around. I like being sort of in an army situation, like my gym. You know, I actually love it when coaches yell at me.
Yeah.
And I love like doing drills and stuff, but for a couple hours.
Sure. Yeah, not all.
As my whole world, my whole life? No, I don't think so. Maybe. I've never tried it, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I don't want society organized that way.
No.
Could be wrong, but I don't think I would like it.
Have a.
But other people would.
Sure.
This is the problem we have.
Yeah, everybody's different, right?
What do you do with those people?
Goodness. Well, you put them in the concentration camps.
No, come on. No, you give them you give them Marion County and you keep Polk County.
Sure.
Seriously. Decentralization.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't even need to be that. We can do it with the market forces, right? Where if you want to be woke up, then you install the app that has somebody yells at you, right? Or something like that. If you want that regimented lifestyle, you can get it.
Yeah, but you should allow Marion County to be a concentration camp.
Really?
Yeah. But if they want it, sure, don't you?
Well, what if
you have to? Otherwise, well, what are you going to do? Invade them?
Invade them, right? Well, I guess I would let them, but what happens when I'm in Marion County? And I don't want that. Now I have to move to Polk?
I think you're going to have to accept this. I think all you can do is establish a counterexample. And so here in Polk County, we have open borders.
Yeah.
Free migration. Anybody can come, anybody can leave, anybody can live wherever they want and work wherever they want. And you guys look at this, and I'll look at you, and we'll make a decision which is more attractive to us. Hopefully, you'll win over some of their people.
Yeah.
But you probably won't win over all of them, and there will be a concentration camp, a giant concentration camp next to you or near you that you won't be able to just traverse through freely.
Sure.
Well, I don't know what else to say about that, because otherwise you're going to have to invade them with your army, and now you have a state, and it's killing people.
Exactly.
Blah, 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 blah. So you don't look like much of a libertarian anymore. You certainly don't look like an anarchist.
Yeah.
Just let them go. So I say be principled about decentralized autonomy.
Yeah.
And it's cool, as long as we have choices, right?
Yeah.
Now, if it's Marion and Clackamas and all the other counties go concentration camp, and we have one free county left, then it's a different story. But still, then what are you going to do? You're just going to lose. I mean, I don't know. What we want is just always pushing for more decentralization. I think that's really, really crucial now.
Yeah.
So decentralize the United States for one thing. Fuck's sake. It's almost 400 million people in one nation. How on earth does that make any sense?
It's insane. It's crazy.
Right? We have deserts and mountains and swamps and
oceans,
forests and oceans and 2 oceans and the Gulf and the borders. I mean, right? And how many languages and cultures?
God.
Why is that all one? Huh?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
How does Washington, D.C. know anything about what's going on right now?
Nothing.
Where we're sitting.
It's ridiculous, right?
It's physically impossible for them to know anything of any value about your life and my life.
Exactly.
Even if I were all for them having control over my life, right? They literally could not know enough to make any significant decisions.
Yeah, because they need to have somebody following. They need like 2 people to follow you around to exactly know everything that Thaddeus Russell
and asking me questions about what I want. And
right.
You can't do it. Physically cannot do it. This is Hayek's knowledge problem, right? Yeah. So he's completely right about that. I mean, seriously, this should be like agenda item number one, I think, for anybody who's not just libertarian, but even leftist. Like California, after Trump was elected, that's when they decided, we're going to be a separate republic. And I was like, totally.
Do it.
Have your social democratic Bernie Sanders is king republic. Awesome. With socialized healthcare. And maybe it'll be better. Honestly, maybe it'll be better. Go for it. I'm all about it. More of that. We should always encourage people to do that.
Definitely.
To secede.
I think you're right. And that's where I'm looking at things, is because this makes sense. Not only does the government not have as much control, like this is what we're talking about with Kate Brown. I mean, it's the same thing. The feds don't know as much as I do around here. So who is going to make the best decisions about your community? Is it going to be your senator that's staying in D.C., or is it going to be you and your neighbors?
Here's the thing, though. I want to be really clear about this. So a lot of lefty, crunchy, enviro, sustainability jackasses talk this talk too, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So here's the difference, though, between me and them, which is fundamental, which is that for them, it's a moral good, like a moral injunction to stay where you are, right? To be rooted in that community forever. Fuck that shit, first of all. Second of all, tell that to the immigration activists, tell that to Mexicans, right? Because they're all lefties, and they talk about, like being part of, your locality and being rooted in nature and your place. Like, they're so dumb, they don't even think about this. Like, what? But you're pro-immigration,
right?
How exactly does that work?
Yeah. You're right.
And by the way, I'm from California. What are you gonna do with me? I can't be here according to your idea
exactly
of sustainability, right? You can't have just anybody coming into an ecosystem and making it sustainable.
Yeah.
You can't allow the free movement of people.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's just literally not enough food that can be grown here to feed a certain number of people.
Exactly.
You have to stop people from moving. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm not that. I'm just saying what we always want to be is pushing for more freedom of movement.
Yeah.
And also one of the really important things about decentralization and the devolution of power, right, is count the fucking arsenal of the United States military. That thing can kill everybody on Earth 50 times over.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, we can crack
I just did the math on this.
Did you?
Yeah, no, for my last podcast episode, I was just... One nuclear warhead in the United States arsenal can wipe out a major city. One warhead, okay? A Trident II missile carries 8 separate warheads. They break apart upon re-entry into the atmosphere, and then each one is directed to a separate city. So one Trident II missile can wipe out 8 major cities.
God.
Okay? One Ohio-class nuclear submarine carries 24 Trident II missiles. So that's 24 times 8 cities wiped out. Hold on, we're not done. There are currently in the U.S. Navy 14 Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines. So that's 14 times 24 times 8 cities, which is about 2,500 major cities wiped out.
Yeah.
Everybody living in them gone.
Jesus,
which is, of course, the entire world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so they can do it.
Hold on. That's just the submarines. That's just the submarines.
Yeah.
That's just 14 fucking boats. That's just the submarines in the United States military. You do know about the intercontinental ballistic missiles that are underneath the ground all over the goddamn place. I don't even know what those can do, but I assume a hell of a lot of damage, probably at least equal amounts. That's just the fucking submarines. So Ron Paul used to say, in fact, he said, all we need is one submarine going up and down the coast to protect us. Mm-hmm. He was right.
Yeah, you're really right.
Totally right. Mm-hmm. Isn't that incredible?
That's insane. That's yeah. What do you do with all that?
A single submarine, a single U.S. submarine, can kill everybody in China.
Wow.
Yeah, every single city in China wiped out. Even the small cities, gone, toast, done. One submarine.
Yeah.
Oh, guess how long it takes between Donald Trump's order and people's bodies just like evaporating.
8 minutes, right? Or something like that?
Like 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Jesus. Oh, yeah, those things go...
so crazy.
How fast they go? They're just like... They're phenomenally fast.
Yeah.
Thousands of feet per minute or something, yeah. Wow. Yeah, like 10 minutes, tops.
Jeez.
Before you're dead. Donald fucking Trump has all that power.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my point. So, only a ginormous goddamn nation state could have an arsenal that big.
Right.
Right? So there's a reason, like a all hands on deck emergency reason to devolve state power in this country, to break apart the United States of America, to secede as much and as often as possible, to break this thing down into as small parts as possible. I mean, this thing can kill us, literally.
Yeah.
And I think there's a decent chance it will at some point.
Sure. We've gotten pretty close before, right? You know?
Yeah, the accumulation of state power, and not just in the United States, but globally, right? It's just gone up and up and up and up. And the accumulation of military power is just gone up and up and up and up. I mean, people talk about climate change killing us. Fuck you. Like, it's not even close to the threat. I am not even worried about climate change anymore.
Sure.
I am constantly worried about those nuclear submarines. Yeah. By the way, China has some too, and Russia has some too, and they've got missiles as well. So it's not just that we're going to kill everybody. We could easily be killed as well. But even if we do kill everybody and the United States is left, it's not really the world I want to live in.
Right, full of radiation too.
Yeah, and dead people and piles of corpses and smoking vast plains. Usually,
the whole continent.
Previously known as Europe and Asia and Africa. Yeah, so... seriously, like, this should be an emergency.
Yeah.
To devolve state power.
Yeah.
Like, right now. This should be like, for libertarians especially.
Yeah.
This should be like the top of their list. Mm-hmm. We need to encourage secession, lead secessionist movements right now.
Sure.
Full speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And break it down as much as possible.
And that's why I like the Free State Project. And there's a few libertarian, but there's not enough, right? There's a few projects like that. But you're right. I think that it's very important, and that's what I'd like to do. Is I'd like to see where can I interrupt that channel of power being, I guess, what's that word? Shipped overseas is what's the word for that? Outsourced. Outsourced that doesn't. How can we get people to stop outsourcing that control over their lives to somebody else? Because, like you said, there's the payoff, and that's why we do it. It's easier just to work your 9-to-5 job, go home, eat dinner, and watch TV. It's like, man, why would you even want to deal with looking up Donald Trump?
This is why Donald Trump is really useful, right? Because for the first time ever, leftists and progressives and liberals, I won't say leftists because they're actually smarter about this, but like progressives, right? Liberals, for the first time ever, they've been like, oh shit, the government's too powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, they have that thought for a second, and then they go right back to like trying to get their guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Next to the button. So I don't know. I mean, I pretty much lost hope for them. But I mean, I think you can at least make the argument now. Like, the argument didn't make sense to them before. Like, they were like, what do you mean Barack Obama's president? That would never happen. Or even like, they would even think, well, George Bush is bad, but he's not going to do that.
Right.
Right. The Republicans are terrible assholes, but they're not going to do that. But now it's like, oh yeah, see? Now it really can happen. I mean, I actually think it's just as possible now as it was then. I mean, I don't think it's any different, but whatever. I think the generals basically control it. But nonetheless, they think you can now show them, like, tell them this. Right. Do the math about the submarines with them.
That's
and tell them who literally can just give an order and 10 minutes later, all of China is a smoking pile of rubble.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I'm hoping that was.
But then when they say, "Oh, well, it's okay because we're going to get Hillary back in,"
right,
and then it's going to be fine. Say, really? Why not just get rid of the bombs? Because you say you don't like the bombs, liberals, right?
You said Hillary was going to win last time.
But you also say, "Oh, war is terrible," right? Don't they? Kind of when at least when asked, you know, "Oh yeah, war is terrible. Nuclear bombs are horrible." Oh yeah, so there you got them trapped. Checkmate.
Right. Yeah. What
so instead of, so I'll trade you. I'd say to them, oh, I'll totally give you Hillary Clinton as president if you just take away some of the bombs from me when she gets there.
Yeah.
And that's what we can do. There could be a movement. There was a movement, an anti-nuke movement in the 1980s. It was big. It was big. Like, everybody on the left, even a lot of liberals, were somehow a member of the anti-nuke movement. It was huge. Gone. They don't even talk about it anymore.
After the Cold War ended, right?
Yeah. They don't talk about it anymore. But the nuclear arsenal has gotten more and more powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So make that trade with them. Be like, hey, it's true. I will be way less angry about the Democrats being president or anybody being president, your guy being president, if you make the president less powerful.
Yeah.
Cool. Right? We do care less.
Absolutely.
I don't care if fucking, Adolf Hitler, right, becomes president if he's got no guns,
right?
Or fewer, I care less if he has fewer guns, right? But that's the argument that needs to be made to liberals right now.
Yeah,
because you know what they're going to do. All they're going to do is stick the next Hillary.
Yeah.
That's the next president. I mean, Trump might swing it for another term, but eventually they're just going to put the old guard back in.
Yeah.
And by the way, the old guard. Guess who the only world state leader was ever to drop a bomb on civilians? A Democrat named Harry Truman.
Yes, yeah.
That's the only person in the history of the world to ever do that. And he did it twice. A Democrat, not just any Democrat, still a hero, a founding father of the modern Democratic Party.
For sure.
He's on the wall of every Democratic Party headquarters in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
They love him. They worship him. He's a great president. He's one of the top 10 presidents of all time. He's the only person ever to drop nuclear bombs on human beings.
Yeah.
Twice he did it. And they're going to replace Trump with another Truman.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
Or a potential Truman.
Sure.
So there you go.
Yeah, man.
How's that?
Great. That's exactly this is exactly what I wanted. We covered the history of the United States and how the Renegades play in and the culture and how that works and then some of the things we can do about it.
But I think going local is actually the way to go.
Totally. I think you're right.
This is really cheesy, but it's fucking true. That old incredibly cheesy, I'm not even going to say it. I'll say it in a different way. I think that creating alternatives, real alternative ways of living in your locality while thinking about the world and having, more importantly, your mind open to all the possibilities, that's the best thing to do right now. What's a better way? Running for office? I don't think so. Right. Seriously. And the other thing is, what's great now is with communication and transportation, as they are, everybody can know what Nick Hazelton is doing.
Right.
In Philomath. I can't stop. Philomath instantly all over the world. Right.
Yeah.
So whatever it is you're doing can be known instantly everywhere.
Yeah.
God. So do exactly what you're planning on doing.
Sweet. Cool. I mean, that's exciting. I mean, I figured that I was going to get some confirmation bias here because we think very similarly, and I'm surprised that you even.
Let me add one thing.
Go.
So the thing it's up to you.
Sure.
But so if you care about things like individuality and pleasure and the body and right, that stuff, the hedonism stuff, right? Make sure it's not just a political podcast.
Sure.
That you're not just talking about local politics or like what local people think about national politics, or not just talking about like, you know, theory written down by Mises or something.
Sure.
Right? Talk about seriously, like what the best beer is, or what the best fucking blueberry muffin is, or how this thing tastes, or how the mushrooms feel when they go into your system.
Oh yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
What psilocybin feels like and why you love it so much. That feeling, why that's so great. Because that's what people don't talk about with drugs.
Right.
Have you noticed this? Mm-hmm. They don't talk about why people do the fucking drugs. They feel great.
Yeah, that's what it is. It feels good.
They feel fantastic. I want more people, I swear to God, talking about just that and not even saying, oh, but it's bad for me and I won't do it anymore. And I got to give up this. No, just period.
Sure.
It's awesome. It feels fantastic. Period. Done. End of story. I want to hear people talk about exactly how great they make you feel, and don't apologize for it, and don't promise you're going to change your ways, and don't say, well, kids shouldn't do this and blah, blah, blah. Just talk about why we do them. Yeah, which is this amazing feeling we get.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's exactly what I want to do.
That's
exactly right.
So that's revolution.
Yeah.
That's
definitely.
revolutionary. Yeah, it is.
I think you're right. I think you're exactly right.
Without taking over. See, that's the best kind of revolution. You want a revolution where no one takes over.
Right.
Or you don't take over.
I don't want to be in charge.
Right. It's just a revolution in the way people think and the way people are liberated to do what they want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just leave them alone.
Worms. You don't get that. I'm sorry. You're not free
Worms?
to There's some people get that and I forget. It's the way it's like word. It's one of the freedom fiends.
Oh.
Weird quirks we have, Michael Dean's.
Kids these days.
Yeah, I know.
Can't follow y'all.
Yeah, but it means word. So
okay.
Gosh, I don't have any more questions for you. This was really fun. I think I'd love to do this again and talk more about kind of, I guess, more. I think it'd be fun to go over some of the more specific history about the Northwest, if you're knowledgeable about that.
I don't actually know that much. I know some, but I'm not the best person. But sure. I could certainly talk about it. You know what I want to do with you though?
Yeah.
Like somewhere down the line, once you get this podcast really going as a local thing and it's known locally. And, you know, let's do something live. Let's do a live event, like a live podcast event.
That'd be fun.
Involving people locally, and and I'll make it my podcast, and you can make it your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And, right? Does that sound?
That sounds great.
Do what we're just talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing something locally, but having open and curious minds.
Sure. I'd love to do that. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for coming here.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Nick.